Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. I am Phil Bakke, and I'm joined tonight by Mika Burrell. Mika, how are we doing tonight?
Doing well. Just trying to shake off the weekend. It's Monday night. It's getting warm in El Paso, so that's kind of nice.
What
And
I
the
like to hear.
sun's setting later, so like slowly creeping out of winter, which is nice. How you been, Phil?
Better. We're getting over some illness in my household. Yeah. So now that that's worked its way through, we're hopefully entering a healthier spring, because this winter it feels like everybody was just sick the whole winter. So
No, for real. I was sick for like all of February. I'm like,
yeah,
this is ghetto.
just no, just hellish. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's horrible. Well, and this weekend, not one to shake the rust off really, or help shake the winter off, as Locomotive falling in the Derby again. But before we get to talking about the Derby del Camino Real, we'll talk a little bit about the first ever Open Cup win against Harpos FC, and then we'll talk a little bit about USL's big news from this past week. But before we get started, if you are finding us for the first time, welcome, and you can find us on all the big podcast platforms. You can find us on Twitter. I'm gonna be calling a lot of entities by names that they don't want to be known as anymore in this in this episode. We'll get onto that in a little bit, but yeah. So find us there, and we will. We're back with episodes. We would have done a watch along of the Derby, but these early kickoffs are ridiculous. And the bad news I'll share up front is there likely isn't going to be a watch along for Hartford on Saturday either, because that is a noon kickoff Mountain Time.
Yeah, that's
on
insane.
Saturday, which
That's
is
crazy.
just wild. And should be illegal. So I don't know. Anyway, Mika, I mean, first ever Open Cup win for Locomotive. We'll start with the positives. So on Wednesday at Southwest University Park, Locomotive facing off against Harpos FC. And we talked about the fact that, you know, they're in the first round by virtue of their poor league finish last year, but took care of business in a pretty emphatic way with the 5-1 victory over Harpos. Is it just one of those where it's like, hey, you beat who's in front of you, and we got this Open Cup sort of monkey off our back?
Yeah, I think you can't read a whole lot into this result, with all due respect to Harpos. I mean, obviously we talked about, you know, their ability and kind of the seriousness of their side, despite being quote unquote amateur. But, you know, this was the first time we've ever faced opposition not, you know, in the professional game, not in the USL kind of setup. So the boys definitely took advantage of that. Really wasn't that much rotation. And Wilmer Cabrera said, you know, just because it's a cup doesn't mean we're going to like take it easy. We're going to take this seriously. And so as a manager who's won this competition before, I suppose we should have maybe expected that.
Sure.
But yeah, so a lot of, you know, names on the team sheet that you would consider first choice at this point who started the game, and we dominated them. I mean, 70% possession says it all, really. And yeah, the vast majority, I think the 3 out of our 5 goals were scored by defenders, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, some interesting celebrations as well. I think they were just having fun, you know, and it was fun to watch, and we took care of business, and thank God, because it's been a long time coming. And I think most of the USL sides took care of business in these opening rounds. I think maybe like was Birmingham Legion maybe one that did not.
Yeah. The unfortunate only USL championship side that did not advance out of the first round.
Not a superlative you want to have.
Yeah. And then all of the cup sets outside of Birmingham Legion who fell to USL League 2 Little Rock Rangers, which is a pretty serious team as far as League Two goes, like good following, all that sort of stuff. But all of the other cup sets and stuff happened to MLS Next Pro, I think, primarily.
Farolito taking down Mark Lowry's Real Monarchs.
Poor Mark. He can't get anything done in that competition. It's unfortunate for him, but El Farolito, that was, I mean, of all the games, that was the best watch of that lone fan waving an El Farolito flag on the far sideline for over 90 minutes. So yeah, no, it was a good result. But overall, Locomotive taking care of business. I would say the only thing in terms of like notes from this game is that I think there's probably there was probably something in the second half where obviously, you know, Locomotive were sort of out of sight by halftime, and it felt sort of done and dusted. They added another, you know, before Harpos got there. I think it was 4-0 when Harpos scored.
Right. Yeah.
Their one. So I would say, you know, Locomotive pretty much had distanced themselves, and the result was a foregone conclusion at that point, and maybe they dropped off just a little bit. But I would say that Harpos, like, there were moments in the second half where I was like, maybe they regret bunkering as much as they did in the first half, because I feel like they started to apply some pressure, and yeah, there were some changes made, but I don't think the lineup got much weaker when Locomotive made the substitutions, because they brought on Amando Moreno and among other changes of, you know, players you'd expect to see around in and around the team. So that was number one. I think Harpos maybe could have gone for it a little bit more, and maybe would have seen something different. But the other aspect of this being that with all those goals being scored by defenders, I was a little concerned that maybe they were just sort of emphasizing their physical, the golf in physical class over a, you know, what is essentially a Sunday league team. Like, bullying them on corners is not necessarily like the, you know, tactical sort of and more sort of free flowing just passing around and creating tons of chances from open play. Like, not to say that we didn't create chances, because we certainly did, but I think I was expecting a little bit more in terms of creativity. And I think honestly it was maybe symptomatic of what we'll talk about later with the New Mexico game. But for the team coming out of Phoenix, you know, out of that Phoenix match where it was like goals galore, I was kind of hoping for them to, you know, they got plenty of goals, but it just felt like they maybe were getting them from their physical advantage over Harpos versus the technical advantage, which also sort of should have been extremely like evident, and I think was for periods of the game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I am a little annoyed not to get the clean sheet. Sebastian Moramora's club debut.
Yeah.
Really, he wasn't asked to do anything.
Yeah.
But he didn't make a save.
Yeah.
So he does let the De Boer, I think was his name, Baptiste De Boer. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Who scored in the 65th minute. So whatever, I'm nitpicking, but I mean, obviously I'm happy for us to go on to the next round. It's kind of,
for sure,
it's weird to like still have Open Cup to think about. And right. we take on yet another entity that you will be dead naming shortly.
Yeah. Yeah. Ventura County FC. You cannot hide. This is LA Galaxy 2, just operating under a different name. No, they rebranded because of MLS Next Pro's sort of, their attempt at competing with USL in terms of having independent clubs and appearing to be sort of a different entity when in reality they are, it's minor league baseball. Like, they're just calling them a different thing, they are, LA Galaxy too. So that being said, there's priors between Locomotive and LA Galaxy too. So even though they'll be wearing a different, crest and a different shirt, this is a matchup that has not been exceedingly kind to Locomotive over the years.
True.
I think one of Mark Lowry's worst defeats ever came away to LA Galaxy 2, and the game will be
5-1, 5-0.
5-0, I think.
Cursed.
So yeah, I think this is an interesting one. And away in California, unfortunately, I was hoping that we would get a home draw again, but I guess maybe the hope now is try to get into the third round. And I would say, at that point, you're looking for, we probably got to beat a USL championship team at some point to get a shot at an MLS side, which, this club has never gotten the chance to do.
Now that would be weird. I mean,
Real
one step
Salt
at
Lake.
a time, but
Is Real Salt Lake? Oh no, Real Monarchs were in. The dream is a Diego Luna return.
yeah,
We'll maybe talk about him a little bit later as well. But yeah, so that'll be it. It makes for a very interesting next week in terms of Locomotive away in Hartford next Saturday, Wednesday in Carson, California, and then back in El Paso the following Saturday in a 3-game week. So challenging travel schedule for the lads.
Has Southwest Airlines new bag policy come into effect yet? Because if so, that's nasty work. Because bags fly free, but I don't know if that's. I hope that it's still in effect, but otherwise, that's gonna be a very expensive week for the boys.
Gonna be coughing up bag fees. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But talking about like tiers of play and all these sorts of things, league systems and everything, USL dropped a bit of a bombshell last week by announcing that they are going to be starting promotion and relegation along with the advent of, well, I think it's so far being called USL First Division or whatever, but I think it's going to be called USL Premier if I was a betting man. But that'll start in 2028, and in that first season, they are going to introduce promotion and relegation between the divisions in USL. At Herbie Taylor 73 on Twitter asked just reaction to the promotion and relegation and the potential for forcing a new stadium based on the professional league standards that are set out by US Soccer. So participation in this first division will likely be contingent on having a soccer specific stadium. And Locomotive obviously absent that at the moment, but initial reactions, I guess, from you, Mika, and then we can maybe hear from Wilmer, because he also commented on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously extremely exciting. Still a little ways away, which I think they're going to start in the 2028 season, if I'm not mistaken. So still some time to kind of wrap our heads around what this means, right? And also for the clubs to prepare and for the leagues to prepare, for the logistics of this, because while it's extremely exciting and it will set them apart from, MLS and the rest, as far as the United States is concerned, I'm sure there's just a ginormous amount of planning that has to go into actually implementing this, and so that's going to be really fascinating to see. But as someone who, outside of supporting Locomotive, I watch leagues that have promotion and relegation and always have. It's about time, I think. And I think it'll be great for competition. I think it'll be potentially very interesting when it comes to investment. If we see folks trying to, get in on the action, get in on the ground floor, if you will. So yeah, I'm really excited. I found it fascinating that it was a super majority vote. The way I
Yeah.
understand it is that the League One clubs and the championship clubs each voted, but I don't know if them together had to make up a supermajority or if they had to have respective supermajorities. I'm not exactly sure, but I was
Yeah.
told that they both had their own votes. And trust me, I tried to find out how Locomotive voted, but I could not torture that out of anyone. But there might be a statement maybe from Alan Ledford forthcoming. We'll have to see, wait and see about that, because I think, I mean, it would just be fascinating to know, right, where our ownership stood on the issue. But because I mean, some owners did go on the record saying that they were in favor of it, but ours conspicuously did not. So, as for forcing a new stadium, yes, I mean, of course, there's those rules regarding, you know, top flight football and having X amount of seats, I guess, per stadium, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And right now, I think only like 4 stadiums meet that requirement in the USL system. So, you know, it's a question for us, but a question for a lot of folks,
Yeah.
as far as getting in compliance with that. I would imagine there'd be some kind of special dispensation if that's not fully accomplished by 2028. But as for Locomotive itself, I mean, as we know, the lease that the city of El Paso and Mountain Star Sports Group has does contemplate, you know, it has a clause in there about possibly Mountain Star developing a soccer specific stadium for USL play in the future. So it's not to say that they haven't thought of it, right? Obviously they have. And you can just Google that lease for yourself and read it. But as for actual like news on any development, none that I know of.
Yeah.
You know, I think politically and economically these times are kind of fraught, so we'll have to see, you know, how that comes to pass, if it comes to pass. But yeah, I hear a lot of folks on the internet saying, you know, it's a requirement, and to me it's just like, that's such a huge requirement though that I don't
Mhm.
think you can really enforce that unless you make the quote unquote punishment relegation, right? I
Right.
don't know. We'll have to see how that plays out. I certainly hope for our sake that we are gonna move on a stadium at some point, but it's just there's just so many moving parts.
Yeah. The sanctioning question with US soccer is a bit of the question mark as well, of like how many waivers can they get and
Mm-hmm.
still get sanctioned at a D1 level. And I think there are certain teams that they are banking on being a part of the first season of that new first division to secure that sanctioning.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're probably relying on the sporting merit, like FIFA bylaws aspect of continuing to be sanctioned, despite the fact that they may have some of those stadiums relegated out of the first division. So yeah, it's a tough question. It's also tough given Gianni Infantino is seemingly like absolutely obsessed with MLS. And
Right.
so who knows? But yeah, I think you could say there's still a lot of time in the sense that like we are talking about 3 full years from now. And at the same time, getting anything done in 3 years is not a long time when you're talking about developing real estate.
Right.
So yeah, there's quite a bit of work to do. I don't think there's going to be anything like imminently happening. And if there was, you'd almost certainly be hearing rumblings of it in El Paso circles. So yeah, nothing there. But Wilmer had his say. Mika, you asked him a question in a press conference regarding USL's announcement, and we're going to go ahead and hear from Wilmer now.
I think it sounded really, really interesting because that will open opportunities and possibilities. and obviously, the competitiveness among the more teams and possibilities, not only to participate in the league, but also understanding that if you perform well, you can move up, and if you don't do well, you go down. Is something that it happens all over the world, but here. So I think it sounded really interesting. I imagine they're trying to um, plan and organize how, because it's all about the possibilities, financial possibilities, and uh, equal efforts in terms of the possibilities for everyone that participates in these type of leagues. That you know if they're they're ready to do it, they have the facility, they have the stadiums, they have the fans, they have the team, and they have the budget. And so I think USL, it will be incredible successful. But yes, it sounded really good. Let's see how they're gonna try to develop and how they're gonna incorporate all the teams in that aspect.
So, a couple of interesting things about what he said, but Mika, what struck you about Wilmer's response, particularly in his response to USL announcing this news?
Yeah, I made a point to ask the question because I just really wanted to hear from someone who's been in this league for so long as a manager, right, and has seen it all, really. I mean, I think it's pretty obviously a measured response, right? I mean, he doesn't go too far in either direction of like, oh, this is terrible or this is going to be amazing, right? I think he's hedging a little bit, saying it's quote interesting, right? So I think he's trying to be measured about it, and it's almost kind of like I would like to see it kind of thing. Because again, Wilmer has been around for a long time. He's seen a club he's managed before fold, right? He's seen a lot of stuff. He's seen ownership groups lose interest, right? Or so I can see why the measured response, he might think, I'll believe it when I see it, kind of thing. But I think he also was very clear that he recognizes the competitive potential, right? Because he himself, as a player, played, if I'm not mistaken, in leagues that had promotion relegation in Colombia. Obviously, played for the Colombian national team at a very high level. So he's used to this, and he made that point of like everyone in the world does it but us.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean that's what I took from it, is just measured. But what'd you make of it, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, similar takeaways. I think obviously no one really knows yet what it looks like. Like, they talked about implementing it, and there are very different approaches to promotion and relegation depending on what league system or country you're talking about. We have the 3 down, 3 up in England. Would they do something as aggressive as that, where I'm not saying it would be 3, because as a percentage of the league, that would be way too much. But like, will it be 2? Will it just be a single team? Like, 1 up, 1 down? Will it be 2 and, a 1 and a playoff? Like, how are they going to handle it? How are they going to handle playoffs in general? Because we still utilize a playoff system to determine league champions. And if you use a playoff system to determine promotion, that can be a little bit of a perverse incentive, basically, of like not rewarding the best team with promotion and all those sorts of things. And it's like, oh, does the supporter shield winner gets promoted and the playoff like champion gets promoted, who knows? Like there's plenty of questions. So it's hard to judge, I guess, like what exactly, I think it is interesting because there's so much that we will still need to see about how it's going to work and what it actually means. And I think the question marks for USL, because I think right now it is the professional levels are going to do promotion and relegation. And the question then becomes like, would you ever connect USL League 2 into this like promotion and relegation setup where you could have clubs that are maybe semi-pro or amateur, like win their way into the professional ranks, similar to, how it works in other countries. Wrexham, I guess, being the like easiest, like culturally relevant example. But having the league system connect, and then the US soccer sicko question of like the people who have been in the soccer wars for some time, or at least like know what's been going on. The real sicko question is like, what does US soccer do about like when one's league system is doing promotion and relegation, but they continue to sanction like a different league system that's a closed shop? How do you then deal with the conflict that inevitably is going to rise, like by there being two first tier soccer leagues, like in the United States, one of which is a franchise model that you have to buy into, and one of which it's still a franchise model technically, like USL is, but you could buy in at a lower cost and win your way into the top. So yeah, it's a very interesting conundrum, I think, that US soccer will eventually have to deal with. But for now, it's just exciting, and like you said, I think long overdue.
Yeah, and I'm open to personally like any number of permutations of how we're going to do it. And you brought up playoffs. I didn't even think of that. I think the only thing that I don't want to see, and I don't know, I might be in the minority, but I don't want to see a relegation playoff. Like, I think if you're getting relegated, you're getting relegated. Like, no takesy backsies. I just think it favors at least in Europe, I feel like historically it favors the top division team. Like, it's a get out of jail free card. Not free, but like it's a lifeline.
Yeah, Germany
you see this in the Bundesliga a lot. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, it's the easiest example. Yeah,
I think I would rather because I think you should be rewarded for getting into a place of promotion in your league, like in whatever, if it ends up being League One, right, up into the championship, up into Premier, whatever. Like, I don't think you should have that like taken from you by a playoff with a higher team of someone that did terribly all season.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I could be in the minority on that, but
I do prefer the English approach in that if you're gonna do a playoff, to just add some more sort of like stakes and excitement at the sharp end of the season. Doing a promotion playoff amongst teams in that level,
promotion playoff
below,
is cool.
Below the, I like the championship as an example. Top two teams go straight up, then a playoff for that third place. I think that's like the ideal.
Or if it's only two, then it'd be really interesting that the champion goes straight up, and it's like that's the ultimate reward, and everyone else plays off for the second spot.
100%.
That I could definitely get behind. I just don't want a relegation playoff where it's like you can stay up potentially by winning that. Yeah, but no, I think we're on the same wavelength about that.
And then bottom two teams go down, which would have meant. I think we just got to say it. Like, it would have meant that had this existed, Locomotive would be playing in League One right now. If the bottom two teams in the championship went down, because we were second worst. So,
I mean, no shade, but it wouldn't have been the first time Brian Clarehout got relegated. So. That's just a fact, right?
That's it. I mean, it would have been his third relegation, I think. So
Oi, 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 oi.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, Mika, I guess all that's left to talk about at the moment is the Derby. So I think we'll take a quick break and chat the Derby del Camino Real.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to Seriously Loco. Mika, there's no two ways about it. A loss in Albuquerque always is rough. The way that we've contrived to lose the last two trips to Albuquerque have been exceptionally ridiculous. I guess last year's trip particularly painful given that Locomotive led so late on in that one. This one painful because of the late nature of the lone goal, and really just the fact that Locomotive by the end were clinging to this 0-0 draw, and we're trying to make it out of there, having sort of fluffed their lines the couple of chances they had for a smash and grab, but bit of a change side in a couple of ways, but overall just another disappointing trip to Albuquerque. What did you make of it overall?
You make a good point that, it's just really not been a good spell for us in the Derby del Camino Real. And this one is not as traumatic as the one that that they ended up winning 3-2 and we were leading for much of it. Because I feel that this one was a lot more predictable in the sense that we approached the game in a way that invited them onto us, I think. And not in the way of not in the sense of trying to set traps and then counterattack. It was just to not touch the ball at all. So I think you can't be surprised when a player of Greg Hurst's quality finds himself, alone in the box, unmarked on a counterattack, opening day at home, facing the curse and the fans, and buries a really nice shot. So yeah, not as traumatic, still upsetting. Mm-hmm. But I don't think we can't really be shocked with this outcome, I don't think.
Yeah. I think you're right on the mark with the it felt predictable. And anytime that you go to a big rival and sort of play as, I'll just say, negatively as we did, it very much, like you said, it didn't feel like an incisive counterattacking approach. It was very much we're gonna make this really tough. We're gonna try to be really tough to play through, and we're really not gonna try to break out all that much. It felt very akin in some ways. The trauma of this one was more of a this feels very much like how we used to play when we were at our lowest points last year, which was pray to God we don't concede, and then as soon as we have possession of the ball, boot it over the top and hope somebody latches on. And it got a little bit better in the second half, especially early in the second half, and we'll talk about some of those chances. But team news wise, the big news, obviously, Jamali Waite on international duty, so it was Sebastian Moramora making his league debut, as well as Brian Romero, who, I mean, you spoke about during the Harpos game, I think, in our group chat, and maybe on Seriously Loco's feed as well. But spoke about the fact that he was playing himself into a spot in the team, and rightfully got the nod, given his form in that game, but perhaps not for the player that you thought he should come in for.
Yeah. It's funny because I think Romero actually for the most part had a pretty good game.
I would agree. Yeah.
You know, something like, let me check so I'm not lying on here, 94% accurate passing accuracy. He's the only defender to not get carded. You know, and so he was building off that 2-goal performance against Harpos, and you know, was solid, I think. Also tried to get the ball forward a couple times, which I don't think that Ortiz had a couple more passes in the final third, but certainly Alfaro, I don't know that.
Yeah.
He like, I mean, going back to your original suggestion, like I thought Tony probably should sit for this game, not Wahab Akwe. Although Wahab Akwe did have like 2 really like suspect clearances in was it the Phoenix game, where it was like, okay, well maybe you can make a case for letting him ride the bench for this one. So, but yeah, so Romero definitely deserved his selection. Palermo, Ortiz, and Tony, they remain. Midfield was a little weird too. Did you already say Eric Calvillo came in for his first league start? Okay.
No, didn't speak. Yeah. So Calvillo, it was a Calvillo Coronado. And then the change up top was Andy Cabrera came in for Tumi Moshabane. But speaking of midfield first, I mean, Eric and Coronado next to each other, sort of enforced because of Daroma's suspension. And I would say probably some of the minutes in the legs of, he looked great against Harpos, who was our other midfielder.
Was it Coffee Tumasi?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I was just having a brain fart. So anyways, so yeah, sort of an enforced duo there in midfield. But what'd you make of the midfield, and why did it feel that way to you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm thrilled to have Eric Calvillo back, the captain. Give a little continuity to this side. You know, had 45 minutes against Harpos and looked sharp. So, and I thought for the most part he had a good game. A couple of times where he was trying to take the ball off the defense and the play didn't work out, but for the most part, I felt Eric was trying to make things happen. Andy Cabrera Jr. starting, like, the more that I think about it, the more that I don't remember any times that he has started and impressed. I think he's come off the bench and looked more lively.
Yeah.
And so substituting him for Toomey, I felt just it didn't help us link play, if that makes sense. Because I feel like Toomey is like sort of a 10, like behind the 2 strikers, whoever that happens to be.
Yeah.
Lately, it's Beto Avila and Armando Moreno, and I don't know that Andy is that player. Not a banner day for him. He's subbed off at 76 minutes. Coronado too.
Yeah, not to pile on, it should have been a lot earlier than that. He was, I mean, it just.
I mean, there had been a point where at like half an hour he had like 5 touches or something, right? Like,
yeah, I think in the entire first half he had 5 touches,
which is just not acceptable.
Yeah,
at all.
There were a couple of different sources which rated him. I mean, he was the lowest rated Locomotive player on FOTMob. He's the lowest rated player in the like goals added ratings on the USL stat account that I've cited before. So just like by many metrics, he just did not have a good outing. And it was notable, I think, just to highlight the reason that it's like not trying to dig out Andy specifically, but to say that I think it highlighted Toomey's importance in this side, because what he did particularly well against Phoenix and was very, very noticeable was being able to link play as that sort of false 9 to allow Beto Avila and Armando Moreno to take up really good forward positions and receive the ball in the way that, in the manner that they want, which I think is why our output was so good against Phoenix. And it can sound a little bit oversimplifying to say we took out this one player and now it doesn't work. but I do think that Toomey and Andy are very different profile players. And Andy just wasn't able to. I think what they did is they put Andy out on the right-hand side and moved Beto back central. And for whatever reason, Beto in that straight up whatever. I mean, I guess it's a false nine. I don't really know how to characterize it 3 games into the season, but that role, Beto does not play particularly well. I think he enjoys having a little more space out wide and being able to like roam a little bit more. He definitely has like that Josue Aron Gomez, like we saw against Harpos, like he can finish from narrow angles. He's got good technique, like from different shooting areas. So being central and dropping a little bit deeper doesn't really like suit him. And it also didn't suit Andy Cabrera, who I think he just like he just felt like he didn't have a place out there. Like he was just kind of roaming around, and I kind of feel for him because it just felt like he couldn't really get involved in the game. And that's not to say our other forwards in the first half were involved in the game really either. He just was notably not involved in sort of any material way. And I think it again highlights just how important Toomey is to the way that we try to attack.
Yeah, I mean, should we get on to the first half? Because I think we could probably sum it up pretty succinctly because it was awful watching.
Terrorism.
Extremism.
Yeah. This was I think I could say I think we can honestly say that this is one of the worst halves of Locomotive football I've ever watched. Not from a Locomotive perspective. We've played way worse. But in terms of just pure entertainment value, I don't think that there's been one that like there's not one that springs to mind in terms of nothing occurred for 45 minutes. Like they technically played the game and the clock ticked to 45. And that is about like the extent, with the exception of one very, very good save from Sebastian Moramora. There was not really much of note. Like even New Mexico United were also poor.
Well, yeah, I first of all, I completely agree. I think there was just like nothing doing really, no shots, no threat, no ball possession. New Mexico United, I think they, if anything, will be disappointed by this first half because they were playing this sarcastically high line, anchored by 34-something-year-old Kalen Ryden.
Yeah.
And you would think if you're going to be taking that risk that you'll be peppering the goal. And they did not do that either.
No.
So, I mean, yeah, you brought up the one highlight of the first half in the 34th minute. Fantastic sprawling save from Moramora on Nascimento, the new Brazilian forward for New Mexico United. He's played in really cleverly, but Moramora reads it all the way, and it's really good goalkeeping from someone who really wasn't tested at all against Harpos. So fair play to him in such a big game to make that save. But other than that, this first half can be deleted from the archives, and I think we'll be just fine. But
you talked about how high New Mexico's line is, and I'll go to the USL stat. So I mentioned the pass maps in the past, showing average position, and New Mexico United's their line was so high, in fact, that the average positions of their central midfielder, like of Jabang, was actually deeper than their center backs.
I mean, that checks out. And I think what really like chaps my hide is that Kalen Ryden, like FOTMob gives him man of the match. And it's like playing a line that high and he gets man of the match. It just, it pisses me off because there was an opportunity to exploit this and we just didn't. Yeah. And now that I think about it, and this is a question that will probably come back at the end of the discussion, is just like, I'm still in two minds of like, were we just cowardly and negative, or were we trying to really protect a backup goalkeeper who is making his debut in a derby on the road, who ended up actually being one of our better players? I don't know. Because I just don't know what the explanation is for how we approach that first half, because it just beggars belief.
So the only player for Locomotive over the course of the entire 99 minutes, including stoppage time, the only Locomotive player whose average position was in New Mexico's half is Amando Moreno.
Yeah, and you saw that, I think.
Yeah,
because
there wasn't
we did have. Yeah.
So that that to me does suggest that while New Mexico was absolutely camped in our half, and I get some of it is we let New Mexico have this sort of, and especially in the first half, okay, you can have as much possession as you want. Who cares? Because you're not doing anything with it. And that's all well and good, except like if you're not then offering anything on the counter, especially like you said, with the high line, and they're never feeling any sort of threat, then it's like, okay, well, they're just going to continue to crash against you. And every once in a while, like even a team that's not having a ton of success breaking down this sort of low block that we were playing, or well, it wasn't even really a low block. It was like a compact block, because it wasn't that low. It was just everybody was playing like in a 20-yard box to keep them from going over the top, or try to play an offside trap, I guess, but to try to invite the balls over the top for more and more to claim. I guess that was happening a lot too. So it wasn't really, but anyways, they're like throwing themselves at us, and every once in a while the ball might just run for one of their players, which is essentially what happens when Luis Fernando like ends up on the end of the ball. Like it just kind of comes to him and he's one-on-one with the keeper suddenly, and now you're in deep trouble. And I think, what eventually ends up happening, it's sort of why it felt inevitable, because we just weren't offering enough to keep New Mexico honest, where they were just going to keep going, even though it wasn't particularly effective for most of the 90 minutes.
Right.
So first half ends essentially having occurred. But Mora obviously can hang his hat on the save. The thing about the second half is that immediately after halftime, and I think we saw this against Phoenix as well, like Locomotive did come out of the break much better, which the bar was in hell. So like they could have basically done anything and it would have been better than that first half. But in this case, like they do create some chances out of the break, and it sort of felt like maybe from like 45 to like 55, maybe those like 10 minutes right out of halftime, it was like, that was sort of the game, or ended up being the game.
Yeah, that window, that 10 or so minutes window, was really all that we could show for ourselves in terms of like actually getting the ball into the box. I mean, Avila has that chance basically one-on-one. There is a defender inside, but one-on-one with Tabakis, and he can't, put it past the Greek. Then he has that second chance immediately on the corner where he's completely unmarked, almost like mirrored what Greg Hurst ends up putting away.
Yeah.
But he's completely unmarked at the edge of the area. Goes for the acrobatics, which maybe he has to because the ball's a little bit high, but also like I expect a little bit better contact there. He's had a good start to life in the blue and yellow. Let's be fair. Sure. But I wish we would have tested Tambakis on that sequence, because you're not going to get that kind of opportunity often.
And it was like, to Locomotive's credit, it was well worked. And I feel like a lot of times when we try training ground stuff and set pieces, we end up totally fucking it up. So it was like a nice change of pace, that it was a well-worked set piece, well designed, and it lands at the feet of the guy, of one of the guys that you would definitely want to be taking the shot. And when I first saw it, my immediate reaction was like, it felt like he had time because he was so wide open. But in those areas, like a touch can, especially like you said, like that at that height, it's not particularly easy to control. Like he may even have to like chest it down and then try to like strike, which it just takes time and all that stuff. So he goes through the acrobatic and he just doesn't make the contact that he wanted. And it is, a mischance. And then Amano Moreno has, well, I think it's like a couple of chances basically back to back where he sort of like, he gets played through the one time and then I think he goes for like a chip on Tambakis and it just hits Tambakis. Like I hesitate to even call it a save because it was just his body was in the way. And then he drags a shot wide like a minute later. But it was really this like flurry of activity like right after halftime. And there was something, I don't know, there was something about Locomotive that it felt like there wasn't urgency in how they were approaching these chances when we're watching at home. Like, this is all you're going to get. Like every chance in this stadium is precious because we just don't like, I don't know, we just don't play particularly well there. And there was like I don't know, it just felt like a couple of times like we approached the situation a little bit more casually than I would think, where there wasn't that sort of urgency around taking a chance or trying something a little bit different or trying to cut inside or win a penalty or whatever. Like they're just we just kind of took like the first option and we're like, get him next time.
Yeah, we weren't making them pay for their mistakes because, again, in the first half, New Mexico really didn't do anything special. Yeah. In the second half, we upped our level a little bit and started to show that they weren't really doing anything special and they could be got at, but we didn't actually make them pay for it.
Yeah.
And there could be myriad reasons why that's the case. These players might be still trying to get to know each other and what they expect out of each other. What have you, but still, like, I still think we, like, Beto Avila in particular, I think he has to make contact with that one chance a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then Amando's chance is agonizing because it just, like, rolls wide. Like,
yeah,
you're just waiting to see, like, is it going to touch, the lip of the post and head in, and unfortunately it doesn't. So, he scored 24 goals or something like that over 4 seasons at New Mexico United, so I don't know that has he scored one against them?
He did. He scored the penalty to give us the lead last season,
but nothing from open play yet, right?
No.
Yeah, so not quite a monkey on his back, but I'm sure it would have really lifted him to score at the Lab in such a big game. But it's just disappointing that we couldn't make them pay for some of the poor play that they showed. But then the inevitable comes later.
Yep. This is no, it is painful because like you said, there wasn't anything particularly impressive or sort of devastating about the way that New Mexico played. And this is the sort of game that got them to the top of the West last year when, again, I didn't particularly find New Mexico like to be stunning compared to the rest of the league. Whereas, you looked at the top of the East and it's like Louisville, which is, just like an insane level. And it was like, is this comparable? Similarly, they find a way. So passes played across the box, and it finds, like you mentioned, Greg Hurst, who like you said, in a similar amount of space to Beto Avila, but crucially, I guess, like the ball is on the ground, and he swivels and hits a very sweet strike into into the corner. It was a well taken goal ultimately. But one of those that, like, as it's playing out, you kind of just get this sick feeling of like, what's about to happen. I felt like I was watching in slow motion, or it was like a future version of myself who already knew that Greg Hurst scored, watching it back. Cause it was just I don't know. It just, like you said, it felt inevitable. It felt like, and maybe it's cope of just like how I try to deal with the pain, but yeah, it just felt like it was just always going to happen. And it's mostly disappointing because of the amount of bodies that we had in the box. Like, this was not it was a counter, but it wasn't they had like crazy numbers and like an odd man rush, to borrow the hockey phrase. Mm-hmm. It was 3v6, like 3 New Mexico attackers against 6 Locomotive defenders that were in the box, and nobody could get near Greg Hurst. Like, nobody was near Greg Hurst to close him down.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's focused on Akale to see where he was going to go with it, and it seemed like he had forever to like pick the pass. And then it's just a really good run from Greg Hurst, because he has the pace to get into the box for the opportunity, but also has the intelligence to hold the run a little bit, let somebody else dash to that far post and just hang out and let the play go on without you. And then you find yourself in an acre of space, and he rifles it. And it's a really great finish, unfortunately. And to leave a player like that completely unmarked is just unforgivable, honestly. And I want to give credit even before that, because I think it's one of our wingbacks, maybe Memo Diaz or Gabi Torres or someone, actually picks the ball off New Mexico, who are trying to build out.
Yeah.
And plays, I don't know if it's Amando to Beto or Beto to Amando, but one of them finds themselves one-on-one with Kalen Ryden, who somehow turns on the afterburners, catches up with our forward, and completely bodies him off the ball. Mm-hmm. Like in Tambakis's goal. And he's clapping, and they're able to get that ball right back up the other way and score. Yeah. So like that whole sequence is just disheartening, because it was a chance for us that suddenly was put into our net.
Yeah.
And again, Kalen Ryden, like, for all my slander of him being old and slow, he's still a class defender, and he did really well to stop that chance to fairly body the Locomotive player off the ball and play it right back up to his streaking teammates, who, like you said, it wasn't an odd man rush, if you will, because no one had joined the runner, right? With, on our side, and we were still pretty deep. But yeah, good movement from Greg Hurst, great finish, and that's all she wrote.
It was, yeah, it's terrible. Like, this is, this is one of those where it's like, it always is tough to give up a goal in the 80th minute or later that almost certainly like decides the match. There is no team that I like seeing score a goal like that less than New Mexico United, and to do it at our expense is just terrible. Yeah, brutal way for it to go. But like you said, it's sort of, you reap what you sow, and unfortunately, like the approach that Locomotive had for most of the 90 minutes, like barring basically 10 minutes where they were well on top, and you could argue, and actually in XG terms, Locomotive out XG New Mexico United, albeit by a slight margin, but that is the maybe the more sickening part, is that for all the ball, they actually technically created less than us. Yeah, just a terrible way for it to go. And we couldn't make any of our decent chances count. insult to injury towards the end. Daniel Carter, who had subbed on towards the end, there's a coming together between him and I can't remember the United player who was
I think
over.
it was Seymour.
Oh yeah, it could have been Seymour. They get tangled up, and Daniel Carter is sort of like on the ground with his feet up, and Seymour is like draped over his feet. And
well, to be fair, they're sorry to cut you off, but first they're contesting an aerial duel, and I think Seymour does kind of like elbow him right between the shoulder blades, and it goes down. But then, yes, continue.
Yeah, so then Seymour's like on, like over, like trips over him, and Daniel Carter doesn't like that he's sort of like on top of him, so he just kicks out and basically, I don't know, like throws him up, like basically tries to like throw him off of him with his feet, his studs. So obviously not viewed in a very positive light by the officials, and he's sent off for violent conduct. Red card for Daniel Carter, and one of those where it's like, especially in a league without VAR, the instigator and the responder, you used to see all the time where it was like, it was never the instigating offense that got the sending off. It was always the response. So Daniel Carter, despite the fact that maybe he gets a sore challenge from Seymour, was always going to see red for doing this. You can't do it.
Yeah, and again, having just come on, like not even 5-10 minutes earlier, it's just a bad look, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
you're already down. You're presumably you're a striker. You're on loan. You are given this opportunity to maybe change the game for us. And I think he did get an assist on opening night, if I'm not mistaken. So, did come on and make a difference there. But to then do that, he's 21. He's not a child, right? Like, you kind of, surely you know better. And you can't get rattled like that in a derby, in any game, really, but especially in a derby. Yeah. Which I thought was a pretty like clean affair for most of it.
Oh, for sure. Although there were a couple of, I think towards the end of the first half, there were a couple of moments where I was like, I think Robert Coronado got maybe an arm swung at him. No replay of that one.
Yeah, that's right.
So, but there were moments, but definitely not the most feisty derby we've ever seen.
Yeah, it's not Yuma Moar days. But yeah, it's disappointing from him, and having we get so many red cards. It feels like Jerome is suspending for this one. Now Carter's going to be suspended for the next. Which actually, will he be suspended for more because of the nature of the challenge? Or?
I think the laws are similar, where it would be like a violent conduct would be a 3-game, but I'd have to double check. Because missing 3 matches would be really significant.
Yeah, so it's disappointing. He should never do it. Stupid.
Yeah.
I do remember thinking as I was watching this, like, wow, Seymour's like taking a really long time to like get off him. And
it was weird.
And then he just kicked him, and I was like, oh, yeah. Like the intrusive thoughts won. So as far as takeaways from this one, we did get a question from @NickGo11 on Twitter. Do you think we find an extra gear this year and actually win some of these games? Because obviously 2 draws and a loss, but we've been in all of them in the sense that, like, obviously we get a result out of the first one, are very unfortunate to to draw against Phoenix, and then lose this one late. Surely, like, the breaks in some of these like go the other way, and we win a couple of the games like this. Yeah, I mean, this one, I know what he's saying and what he's trying to convey, but what I would say is, like, we don't necessarily need to find an extra gear. We need to be in that gear when we start the game.
Yeah.
And I think what really added insult to injury for me was after this game, I watched Oakland Roots host San Antonio FC in front of 25,000 people or whatever it was at the Oakland Coliseum. And San Antonio were not deterred by the occasion, which was huge, by the way. If you didn't watch it, check out the highlights at least. Absolute scenes.
Yeah.
Good game, to be fair. But San Antonio went and they imposed their game on Oakland Roots on the road in front of 22,000 of their own fans and came out winners.
Yeah.
With a manager it's his first head coaching job, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So surely someone as experienced as Wilmer Cabrera can conjure something similar, you would think. But yeah, I just, watching that game and having that juxtaposed against this, it almost felt like I would watch two different leagues, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's no rule against taking it to the road team or to the home team, excuse me, as the road team. So I'd like to see us try to do that a bit more. And I'm sure Wilmer would too. I mean, he said in the press conference, when we drop at home, we have more pressure on us on the road to recoup some of those points. And while he said that, I certainly didn't get that vibe from the first half. So work to do for sure.
Yeah. And I wonder, I guess, like where the game plan comes from, because the idea that this New Mexico United team is deserving of that amount of respect, of like, we're going to approach them like we're playing, you know, prime Man City, like where we're like just going to hope and pray that we don't concede, when they demonstrated very early on that like they weren't capable of sort of what we were expecting, I guess. Like I don't know. I just, to me, this New Mexico United team is not earth-shattering, like I said earlier, and I thought we showed them like far too much respect. I would have loved to see us come out and like pressure them a lot more. We saw them make mistakes, even not under a ton of pressure from us. So if we had come out and actually pressed them early on, I'm not saying for 90 minutes on the road, that's crazy. But it just feels like there was an opportunity to be more aggressive and to not show them as so much deference at home, like be a little disrespectful. And I think we could have benefited from that. And then, you know, to just throw in, we're not going to do a full breakdown of or a full preview of Hartford, but, you know, with another road game coming up this weekend against an opponent that is, I mean, I'm just going to say not good. They have one shot on target in 2 league games so far this season. And their only win what so far is in the Open Cup to the New York Shockers. So
hold up, this is the same Hartford Athletic that's like, we're going up.
Yeah.
Like when Pro Rel dropped, they were like, we will be there.
Yeah. They managed one shot on target against Pittsburgh River in a 1-0 loss to Pittsburgh Riverhounds last time out, which was their first shot on target of the USL season. So this is a Hartford team that is they're just not particularly good. They got beat 2-0 by Lexington, which is a team that I think is quite good, but is very new and is still figuring, like in terms of the squad, is still figuring itself out. We don't really know what Pittsburgh is yet, but yeah. So what I'm concerned about is, from an analysis perspective, like going into the Hartford game with this like road approach. Like, I just hope this isn't our road approach, to your point. Like, this can't be the way that we approach every single road game. And particularly this Hartford team, like if we're sitting back and playing really sort of like defensive against a team that I think we are just straight up better than,
Mhm.
that will be worrisome, I think, to me. And I think the one other concerning thing, just to go back to Nick's point here, is that the longer that we know that the longer that they go without a win, the more of a thing it becomes. So I think it's just really important for this team to, like, whatever the gear is, whatever the style is, the tactic is, like, they just need to win, because last season went the way that it did because we just went months without win, and it just became more and more of a snowball effect of, like, every game they didn't win was like, okay, we have to win the next game, we have to win, and we have to win, and we have to win. And it's like they just need to get the win out of the way before it becomes a thing that they're thinking about, because that's how seasons spiral into whatever the fuck we watched last year.
Am I correct in thinking that we went away to Hartford like 2 seasons ago when we were really dog shit and we got a big result there, and that kind of like
Yeah.
gave us a little hope?
Yes.
I think Petrovic scored that night.
Yeah, that's ringing a bell. I think that was during that really bad losing streak. If
yeah.
So,
in other words, we can do it. We have beaten them at their place before. So, surely but I mean, you said it at the top of the show though, that does kick off a week of like insane travel. So that's it's going to be taxing, and you know, with the different like competitions and like suspensions and all this, like I don't envy the job that Wilmer has to do to get this team going, but it has to be done. And I do think we need to win this game.
Yeah. Well, I think that's enough about the Derby. Unfortunately, we've lost 3 of those in a row, for those keeping track. And, well, suffice it to say, I think payback is owed when New Mexico visits Southwest University Park in the near future. But Mika, before we wrap things up, we would be absolutely remiss without talking about the prodigy, the pride of El Paso, the adopted son of the Sun City, Diego Luna, assist for the U.S. men's national team in the third place game at the CONCACAF Nations League, and a player now being thrown around in terms of, in a high profile loss to Panama. Diego Luna was brought up, as the player that maybe Mauricio Pochettino should have involved earlier in the game to give them a chance at winning due to his creativity. And then him paying back that confidence from some of the media and the public with what was a very, very good performance overall against, in a unfortunately losing effort against Canada, as the questions around the men's national team maybe mount, but Diego Luna not among those questions.
No, Moonboy, he was absolutely fantastic against Canada and what was, otherwise a disappointing result. Obviously, had the assist for, he starts the move, to be fair to him, interplay with Timothy Weah, and then peels off, finds himself in the box, collects the ball, really nice touch under pressure in the box, and then finds Ajimang, the fellow MLS player, if I'm not mistaken, for the lone goal against Canada. Wasn't enough to get a result, but still, I thought Diego was really bright, and I do think that Mauricio Pochettino likes him. I think he endeared himself to Poch when he insisted on playing with that broken nose the last time he wore the red, white, and blue.
Yeah.
So, yeah, still only 21 years old, MLS Young Player of the Year last season. Maybe Europe in his future, who knows? But I'm just really enjoying watching his rise. It's crazy to think that this player is making a difference on these grand stages, and he was on this humble podcast not that long ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, so proud of him, and it's just fantastic to see, and I hope it continues, and who knows, maybe he's in. I think he's very much in with a shout for the World Cup squad.
100%.
You know, and having, you know, being the host, that's just insane. So yeah, fair play to Diego. And yeah, really exciting things for him.
Yeah. Just one of those moments, I think, that made it more real, where it's like, you know, him playing in MLS, it's a natural, you know, we knew that he was good enough to play in MLS. So there's nothing sort of shocking about watching him. I love watching him cook in MLS and like be, you know, one of the best young talents in the league. And I love that he's doing well. And there was something that felt much more sort of surreal and kind of next level about him, not just playing for the men's national team, but being in the conversation of players that should be in and around the team, and having a tangible influence on the game, and being basically the best player on the pitch, like in or at least the best player in red, white, and blue, which is just a crazy thing to think about for a kid that, you know, signed for Locomotive when he was 16 going on 17, and now, you know, 21 and thriving. So yeah, awesome stuff, and just really hope for the continued rise, because I think really the sky's the limit for Diego, which we've all known. But well, I did just get handed from the intern the Hartford Athletic game from 2023. It was August 26th. It was a 2-0 win in Hartford. Josue Aron Gomez scored in the 14th minute, and Petar Petrovic with a 69th minute goal to wrap up all 3 points for Locomotive, and it ended a 5-match losing streak. And I think it was 8 without a win.
Yep. I just remember us going absolutely mental about that.
10 without a win.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was
my bad, double that. Like,
yeah,
what?
brutal stretch. Well, it was 10 without a win and 5 losses in a row.
Gotcha.
So yeah, there was a handful of draws in there, and then yeah, so they won 2-0 against Hartford, and then, you know, did enough to sneak into the playoffs on the final day against Oakland Roots. But you know, yeah, so you were right in Petar getting the goal in Hartford. So hopefully it'll be you know, a similar story in that we can get out with I think a clean sheet would be extremely welcome right now, because the goal scoring for once is like not as big of a concern. And yet we've still allowed more goals than we've scored. So, right, you know, by 1, because we've drawn twice and then lost 1-0. So, so yeah, we've got our work cut out for us in terms of, you know, keeping our opponents from scoring. And Hartford feels like a team that we should be able to, but I hate to even say anything, because they haven't scored yet. So this season. So yeah. Well, Mika, any closing thoughts as we wind up here?
This is football related, but it's completely off topic. Today I learned that the number 1 FPL player right now is like a 57-year-old woman named Susan.
What?
Who she like takes notes with pen and paper. She's been playing for like 3 years now. She's currently ranked number 1. And that before she brought Bruno Fernandes in last week, she didn't know who he was, apparently.
What?
So just for all the serious
My
local
kinda
listeners that are still in the FPL league and paying attention, just know none of us are beating Susan. So
No, that's crazy.
I just thought that was funny and had to share.
That's really funny. That's me and Erica have been indulging in the UK seasons of The Traitors. For anyone who's familiar with that reality TV show, that's basically the Game Mafia, like the kids Game Mafia turned up to 11. The UK, like the US versions it's all like reality. Well, with the exception of the first season, which was a mix of like normal people and reality TV stars. The second and third seasons are all reality TV people. So it's like known quantities. The UK seasons are just randos. Like there's no famous people. And it is pure cinema. It is amazing. Because these people are genuinely like having mental breakdowns.
Nice.
Because it's they're lying to each other like the whole time, you know, like this whole idea of who's the traitor. They're basically playing a giant game of Live Among Us.
That's what I was gonna say. It sounds like Among Us, but
yeah.
like real people. That's insane.
Yeah. And so it's wonderful. But the UK version, I'm now picturing Susan, the FPL player, just like cleaning up on the Traitors UK. So that's wild. And to think pen and paper was the thing keeping me from succeeding in Fantasy Premier League. I am jealous of her though. I also wish I didn't know who Bruno Fernandes was.
I almost don't know that I buy that, but I mean, yeah,
that's
Susan Clark, the GOAT.
Wow. Shout out to Susan. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll be back after Hartford. Well, maybe after the Open Cup. I don't know. I guess we'll play it by ear. We'll see what happens in Hartford. And we may come back sooner than later, depending on what goes on. But if you've enjoyed, just a reminder to rate and review the podcast and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Just helps us find more locos. And until next time, hope everyone stays safe and well and stay local.